Welcome back to the LYC Media Arts Studio podcast. Well, it's not the footy podcast today. We have an amazing guest here with us, Rabbi Dr. Professor Sam Lebens. Yes, you heard that right. In the LYC Media Podcast Studio, Rav Cowen. Yep. I can't believe this. TYH, we have Sam Lebens in the podcast booth.
For those who didn't get the TYH, that's thank you, Hashem. Indeed. We're very excited. Sam is back. He's actually, not back to the podcast booth.
That's my first time in here, but I'm glad to be back at Yavneh.
Well, it's good to have you.
Guess who's back?
This is Sam's third time. If you don't know who Sam is, then get out from under your rock.
Exactly.
And ask Grok. That rhymes.
I wonder if Grok knows who I am. We'll have to test that.
Grok does know who you are. I've spoken to Grok personally.
Okay.
So Sam is a philosopher, and you've been speaking to our students over the past week and a bit at Yavneh. And I thought before we get into it, we should talk a drop of philosophy.
All right.
So maybe if you could just, you were talking with our students about the cognitive penetration of perception.
Oh, gosh. Yes, I was.
So I thought maybe, if you want to sort of just the 1 minute version of what it is and how it relates to a Jew.
Yeah, so it's a theory that really comes from cognitive psychology, but philosophers are interested in it. And it's this idea that the languages that we speak actually shape the experiences we have. So, one example would be the more color words you have in your language, perhaps the more perceptive you'll be of differences between different colors. But if you have a word for people, and you have a word for tables, and you have a word for chairs, and you have a word for ceiling, and you have a word for wall, then when you're in a classroom full of kids, you see kids on chairs in a room with walls and a ceiling, and that's literally how you see it. But if you didn't have any of those words, I think, according to this theory that's called the cognitive penetration of perception, your visual field would just be a wash of colors. You wouldn't distinguish one thing from another. It would just all be kind of, in a sense, a blur. So that's the thesis. And it's philosophically interesting because it suggests that the language that we speak and also the culture that we belong to, it doesn't come downstream of the perceptions that we have of the world around us. Rather, our culture and our language shapes the way we perceive the world around us. And it's something that we both have to be wary of, because of our potential for cultural biases. But also it's something we have to recognize, the importance of having an appropriate language for describing the world, because it will shape our experiences. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's perfect. Daska, was that under a minute?
It was look up 90 seconds.
90 seconds.
Okay.
We'll accept it. But there we go. We've started off heavy hitting.
Yeah.
To go ultra meta, without the notion of the cognitive penetration of perception, one wouldn't be able to see the cognitive penetration of perception.
That's absolutely right.
So it's sort of it's circular. So can you give us an example of a Jewish cognitive paradigm that shapes the way Jewish people, particularly maybe those who study Torah, how they see reality?
Yeah, ideally, when a Jew looks at another human being, they should see in them the image of God. And that shouldn't just be a cognitive thing, like, oh, I see a person, and the book of Bereshit says that people are created in the image of God, so I see someone. No, it's supposed to be more direct than that. You literally see them as an image of God. Imagine somebody who doesn't know what tefillin are. They just see men strapping leather onto their arms, leather boxes. What is that? But a Jew who is kind of absorbed into the landscape, the symbolic landscape of Judaism, should see that scene differently. They should see people binding themselves to Kodesh Baruch Hu, to the Holy One. And that's not an easy thing to do, actually, to see the world through the prism of your beliefs. But I think that's what Judaism calls upon us to do.
Beautiful. I even have an example of a non-Jewish person who had that perception. I was on a flight recently, Actually mentioned this to you in the past. And I was putting on my tefillin. I was aware there was a gentleman in a keffiyeh in the row behind, and I was sort of very self-conscious about sort of, putting on talis and tefillin, which is very visually, strikingly Jewish.
I would say, Rav Chaim, with no offense intended, you do look a bit Jewish.
Yeah, it's true. What is it about me? What is it? Is it the dark skin?
Yeah, I don't know. Let's not go there.
Let's not go.
Yeah.
Okay, into the identity marks.
But you were worried.
I
about
was
this
no.
treatment,
Well, I was
yeah.
I was sort of self-conscious. I'm not sure if worried is the term, but I was definitely more sort of looking at myself in a sense from the outer. And then there was a girl near me who was British. How I know that is another story. And she looked at me, and I saw she was staring, and I said, I just looked at her, and then she says, "Wow, that's beautiful."
That's so nice.
And it made me realize that tefillin, wow, I only see them within sort of my frame, but there are other ways of looking at tefillin.
Yeah.
I wonder what she saw.
But so the point of the cognitive penetration of perception could be put this way: we're always going to be seeing the world through a prism of concepts. But the real greatness of a person is if they can actually choose which concepts they wish to view the world through. Jean-Paul Sartre thought that emotions were like a coloured gel. So like you can look through rose-tinted glasses, you could look through yellow-tinted glasses, you could look through... Emotions are like a tinted glass through which you see the world. But what Judaism is inviting the Jew to do is, in a sense, to choose the conceptual scheme through which they see the world, and it should shape their very experience. And I think that's awesome that this young woman, she was seeing your tefillin laying through a prism of beauty.
Very nice.
Very magical.
Very magical. There we go. We needed that. So anyway, this discussion is going to have a beginning, middle, and an end, even though it right now sounds like it's just
Amazing.
having a middle.
No, we had a beginning. There was music.
That's true, and we just had an end with a bit of music too. So we're going to go and we're going to look at a bit of your Yavneh experience, and Daska, of course, is not just here for the looks. Daska
Or the
is going
goalkeeping.
to.
He's impenetrable goalkeeper. I discovered.
Daska is many, many things, and each of those things he does very, very well.
Thanks, Rav.
So Daska's got some questions prepared as well. So
Hard-hitting questions.
All right, I'm
That's
I'm
right.
ready.
Not
I've
just,
got-
what was your favourite cafe in Glen Huntly Road? No, we're talking deep philosophical things.
Okay, so my first question to you, we're going to start with the more conservative run-of-the-mill.
Wait. Here we go, Rav. Here we go. First question from Rav.
Very nice, thanks.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so my question to you is we're obviously a modern Orthodox Jewish school here. Why do you think philosophy is important for our students to be exposed to?
First of all, modern orthodoxy is a philosophy in and of itself. So to be studying what modern orthodoxy is already to broach into philosophical areas, because modern orthodoxy has a particular view about how the Torah relates to the wisdom of the wider world. And, so if you really want to introduce children to modern orthodoxy, I was once leading a tour of 16-year-olds that was officially modern Orthodox, and I asked this girl on the tour, what does it mean to be modern Orthodox? And she says, well, it means we keep Shabbat, but we don't wear skirts and we go mixed swimming. And I was like, that's not what, the founders of modern Orthodoxy would be turning in their graves. Modern Orthodoxy doesn't mean less Orthodox, but it's about integrating the wisdom of the wider world with the wisdom that we inherit through the Torah, and understanding what we're doing in integrating those two languages, so to speak, to use the phrases of my Rabbi Sachs, to integrate the language of Torah and the language of Chokhmah. That requires philosophical sophistication. So that's kind of my mission while I'm here, is to introduce the kids to philosophical ways of thinking, to confuse them a bit, to get them to see that Torah interfaces with every aspect of life, but more particularly with every area of intellectual inquiry, that the Torah interfaces with all of them. And I find that philosophy is the right entry point to doing that, because in a sense philosophy just is thinking abstractly. That's all philosophy really is. and you have to go quite abstract to see how philosophy and arithmetic, how Torah and arithmetic, or how Torah and geography, or Torah and history, or Torah and English literature. You have to go quite abstract to see how they interface and integrate.
Can I ask you, I mean, you've raised something which has sparked for me a thought that I never had. Have you thought about Torah and arithmetic and what those two things have in common?
Oh yeah. So I'm really interested in the philosophy of mathematics, in particular what numbers are. And
just spoiler alert, he does believe that 0 is a number.
0 is a number. 0 is a number. Yeah. If I have a book called A Guide for the Jewish Undecided, and there I argue that the theist has a much more simple story to tell about what numbers are and how they relate to the mind of God than an atheist does. So I don't I'm not directly saying that arithmetic interfaces with Torah, although I'm sure it does in many sugyas. You have to add things. In many topics of the Talmud, you'll have to actually work.
But that's just incidental.
That's just incidental, that's right. Whereas what I'm suggesting is that arithmetic and theology, at least, arithmetic and belief in God are mutually reinforcing.
So for the weirdos listening, can you give the 1-minute version of why a theist has an easier time understanding numbers?
Yeah, well, basically, I think the best way to understand what numbers are is their concepts. But the problem with that is that concepts depend upon minds. Minds think up concepts. And now two problems emerge. One problem is no mind that we've come across is infinitely powerful. So no mind could hold all of the numbers in its head. The second problem is we think that mathematics was true before sentience emerged in the universe, before there were any minds in the universe. So if numbers are concepts, but they need to be held by an infinitely large mind, and they also need to pre-exist human sentience. The theist has a mind on call who can perform that job for us. That mind is the mind of God, and therefore there can be an infinite number of number concepts held in one mind that existed forever.
Okay, so it's kind of like the cloud in a sense. It's where the data exists before it comes down into the small computers. Daska, was that less than a minute?
Well, like there was a Greek-Jewish minute. Yeah.
We're going to get to the difference between Greek and Jewish minutes very, very shortly. One more question sort of linking into your experience here, Sam, is you've spoken about why philosophy is important for the students. I'm interested in how the students are important for you. Is there an experience, a moment, or maybe something broader that has impacted you in your time here at Yavneh? Obviously, there's this trip and there's also previous trips.
Yeah. So there are two things that spring to mind. The first is when I'm trying to teach philosophy to these high school kids, which is a challenge. It's very different to teaching undergraduate students at university, which is what I'm more used to. You have to find the right way to package an idea. And very often that will require an analogy or a metaphor or a story. And one of the greatest things that's really happened to me in the classroom this year is sometimes the kids themselves have found, have suggested analogies or metaphors to help explain the thing I was trying to describe. And that helps me. It means that I end up understanding the material I'm trying to teach better than I did before I started teaching it. So that's one thing that I've experienced in teaching philosophy to these kids. The other thing is I get a tremendous amount of inspiration from being around young people who are actually open. A lot of adults they've decided who and what they're going to be already. So they're not necessarily open to reevaluating everything. But children at their best are imaginative and open to, they're constantly evaluating and reevaluating the world around them. And I think that's exciting to be around and also inspiring because we should emulate that as adults.
Very nice.
100%.
Has there been a particular question that a student has asked you that has stood out?
No, I wouldn't say that because to be, to be really blunt, and I love the kids, right? But a lot of the time they come to me with a question that they think is like super original, and they're like, Sam, you know, I've been thinking, we've got a question for you. I'm not sure you've ever thought about this one. You know, why do bad things happen to good people? And you're like,
is,
you know, and it's beautiful because they've thought of it for the first time, and you know, or last night with Chaim, it was a great question, but it's not an original question, right? We were discussing with the kids, could God create a rock too heavy for God to lift? It's a beautiful question, but it's not as if, you know, if you've spent decades studying philosophy, these questions are not going to be, you know, new to you.
Can I ask you a career-ending question?
Oh, wait, hang on. We need to get it. Go ahead.
My question is, what is your 1 minute answer to why do bad things happen to good people?
Oh, Rav, that is...
Oh, it's brutal.
That was great. Hang on, you need one of these. Yep.
It's brutal. I actually think that the best answer is cumulative. So there are loads and loads of people who've put forward answers to that question. And the problem with all of their answers is it doesn't account for every type of evil. Like there's the free will defense that says, well, there's bound to be some evil in the world if God wanted us to have the freedom to choose between good and bad. If he was really serious about giving us that choice, then he has to allow us to actually do some bad stuff. I think that's a good answer, but only for some badness, right? You wouldn't, you know, you would expect, you know, I want people to have freedom, but every now and again when things get really bad, I'm going to intervene. And God doesn't seem to intervene as much as you might expect him to on the free will defense. But the free will defense might explain a degree of evil in the world. There's something called the soul-making theodicy, which says that pain and suffering are an important factor in shaping a human as they mature. It's like the blows of a chisel that might hurt, but the sculptor is actually using those blows to make you more perfect. And I think some pain and suffering answers that description. You see people after it come out wiser and more lovable and better. But some pain and suffering seem to destroy altogether the person who goes through it. So again, it explains some suffering and not all suffering. And because I've already gone over the minute, what I'm trying to demonstrate here is there's a pattern. There are loads of different answers. None of them capture all of evil, but perhaps all of them capture some evil. You put them all together, and then you add in this thing called skeptical theism, which is this idea that if God exists, then we should doubt our own ability to understand all of the things that he does. Then that kind of follows from theism. Then, you know, I still think the problem of evil is troublesome, but I think when you put all of these answers together and add in a dollop of skeptical theism, you've got reason to carry on being theist, what with all of the evidence in favor of theism. My real answer, I can't do in a minute, but there's a very wacky paper I wrote called The Promise of a New Past, which has to do with God changing the past, and it's part of a defense of God in the face of evil. People can look at that online.
Okay, I'm excited, and I can see that Dasker is itching to get into his questions. But
this is interesting. Yes.
Good, excellent. Okay, you're not itching. I can keep going. I'm curious, Sam. You're a deep thinker, and we've done many tishes with the students, and I always see that when we're singing a song, you enter into a deep space and you come out with some novel interpretation of the words and the meaning. It's amazing to see your thinking in action. Do you ever begin a journey of thinking and then just lose track and start daydreaming? Or do you have a disciplined, is your mind able to really remain focused on an idea? And if so, for how long? Meaning what's sort of your, how many reps can you do?
Yeah, it really is exercise. When I started philosophy as an A-level student, which is like VCE philosophy basically, I remember coming out of classes an hour long with an actual headache because I'd never really used my brain that hard before. It was like really, it literally hurt. And you get better at thinking deeply for longer the more you practice, like any muscle. It's probably the only muscle in my entire body that ever exercises is my brain. But I do sometimes just stare off into the distance, and my wife asks me, "What are you thinking about?" And I can't really answer because I'm thinking about too many things at once.
You're thinking about Man United's defense.
Well, obviously, as well as Chelsea's attack.
Why are we here?
Yeah,
Why?
Exactly.
That's the thing, philosophy.
All at the same time.
Why? Why?
So sometimes I'm not thinking about any one thing. I'm thinking about loads of things at once, and then when I'm ready to write it down, it will come out in like in word form. But to answer Rav Chaim's question, hours go by. I sometimes don't realize that I haven't had breakfast or lunch. It's about dinner time. If I don't have other responsibilities, how long is a piece of string? You can go on thinking, but it's practice.
So they say about rabbis that every rabbi has sort of one drosha, one sermon, and everything they give is sort of
And a duff.
It's a duff.
Is that a duff?
A duff is...
have a favourite duff?
Every rabbi has a
duff.
favourite
Yep,
duff.
yep,
That's
yep,
right.
yep.
A page of Gemara.
Drushan.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, do you have is there a central question that occupies you, or is there some sort of, is there something you find yourself coming back to regularly?
Yeah, there are a cluster of questions. I'm really interested in belief, faith, and rationality, and their interrelationship. And I keep thinking about those concepts and keep coming back to them. I keep thinking about the role of imagination in the religious life. I'm endlessly fascinated by what the imagination is, what its function is, and what it does for us. And I'm also super interested in the relationship between God and his creation, the metaphysical relationship between God and his creation. And so it's those cluster of concepts that I'm always juggling and revisiting and trying to sharpen.
And is there an area that you won't go?
No.
Beautiful. That was your first answer. That was definitely less than 1 minute.
Yeah, well done.
Okay, I have more questions, but I'm looking at Daska and going, this man has prepared.
No.
So
if you've got...
No. I'll throw in some questions maybe as we go. But Daska, let's hear from you.
Look, mine are... They can be, done a bit quicker. They're not too philosophical, but...
Okay.
Look, these are from students as well. More, yeah, here we go. Ready? So, Mission Impossible Halachic Edition.
Okay.
The Mossad calls you in. They need to know if a mission involving sneaking into the Vatican to reclaim Jewish artifacts violates halacha.
Yeah.
What's your psak?
Oh, gosh. I don't like to give psak generally because I'm not...
I don't know what psak is, but that's fine. If you don't like to give
psak is like a halachically binding ruling.
Right.
And I am a rabbi, but I don't like to issue such things. And therefore, I think in this situation, I would advise them to engage in diplomacy with the Vatican.
Okay.
And try and get those things out via diplomatic channels.
All right. Good. Next question. You're aware of Back to the Future, Marty McFly?
Of course.
Yep. If Marty McFly went back to Haran and accidentally prevented Abraham from leaving his father's house, would Judaism even exist? How do causality and covenant play out in the alternate timeline?
Wow, that's so cool. That's such a cool question. The book that I've just finished writing, and it should come out in 2026, is about really chosenness and what do Jews mean by thinking of themselves as a chosen people, and how to render that doctrine not chauvinist, not, God forbid, racist or supremacist. And a lot of it has to do with the covenant between God and Abraham. I'm going to say a really controversial thing. Yeah. But I'm saying it in someone else's name. Menachem Kellner argues that according to Maimonides, it didn't have to be Abraham. It could have been someone else. Abraham was the first person to rediscover God, according to Maimonides, and it's in virtue of that he was chosen to bear this covenant. But if someone else beat him to it, then the chosen people would have been a different people, and that's fine. But there would have been a chosen people on that picture. Just it wouldn't have been us; it'd been someone else. A less controversial thing to say, and I think it's probably more close to my view, is that if God wanted it to be Abraham, he'd have made sure that Abraham found himself in the right sort of situation to
Gotcha.
Yeah. So Maimonides says yes, it could have been someone else. I think Lebens says God have found some other way to make sure Abraham.
Okay.
First of all, what's your dad's name?
David.
Davides.
Davides. Yeah.
So Davides, I just want to just dig into one of the things you mentioned. You spoke about chosenness as potentially racist.
Mm-hmm.
I want to challenge the idea that it even is potentially racist.
Oh.
And this is my challenge. It's actually based on Parshat Korach. So
Korach
Korach challenges Moshe's leadership.
One of your favorites.
Yeah, one of my favorite Korachs.
Yeah.
He challenges Moshe's leadership, right?
Yeah.
And what's Moshe's response? He says, well, everyone get a fry pan and put incense in it, and whoever's incense the fire will come and take, that is the one, which means Moshe's saying, this wasn't me, it was God. Meaning, racist, if I'm understanding correctly, means that you are asserting superiority over, or, the idea that there's some sort of paradigm within which you view others. If it's not to do with you, meaning if there's a divine entity who is choosing, and with those reasons that for the chosenness are not necessarily fully known to us, right? Then how can it be racist? Meaning it's not a nation asserting anything over another nation. Moshe sort of accepts that. If it was me choosing me over you, then you'd have a claim, but it's nothing to do with me.
Beautiful. So I have a chapter in my book, you'll like this, on the Lubavitcher Rebbe and his approach to chosenness. And in one discourse, he said that ultimately the election, the choice of the Jews, is a mystery. And if you believe that, that's certainly going to take away the accusation of racism. It's not that God chose us because we're superior, or because we don't really understand why God chose a particular nation, so to speak, over others. But I would push back a little bit, Rav Chaim, and I'd say that there are some Jewish philosophers over time who have thought that they have understood why God chose us, and some of them have suggested he chose us because we're better than everyone else, and I reject that.
Better is surely a relative term. Better in what way?
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. I discussed that in the book. You have to buy the book.
Okay.
Available at all bookstores.
It will be in 2026.
Oh, right.
It will be in 2026. But personally, I don't think we were elected because we had any particular virtue that's not to be found among others. You'll have to read the book.
Okay.
It's interesting.
Well, I'm curious if I can sort of direct a question to Daska.
Sure.
Because Daska, you're not Jewish. And I'm curious as to what your view on Jewish chosenness is. I thought that'd be interesting.
There we go. My view on Jewish chosenness. That is interesting. I mean, it's not as hard hitting as is Yoda a good philosopher? But I think after being at Yavneh for 17 years and being in many minchas and mifgashes and tefillins and talking about putting on the tefillin, I remember the first time I saw a rabbi putting it on, was my first day here. I thought,
it's weird,
no offense, I thought it was like a fancy dress thing.
Yeah.
Like I literally thought, I know it sounds shocking, but I've seen a lot of films and all that, but there's nothing in film that had that in it.
No.
The tefillin and the tallis as well, nothing like that. So I'm like, what is that? And then someone from the primary said, oh, the men wear that. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And what does it mean? And then I got interested in that.
Yeah.
But I think Jewish chosenness, Rav, like when we have mifgash, and sometimes, on a hot summer's day, it can be a bit of a slog to get through it.
Yeah.
I think having the Hesder and the Shrutz coming from Israel, having rabbis like yourself come and speak to the students is a big boost. I went to a Greek Orthodox school, and it was the same thing. Like you had people from the motherland coming. You had priests coming in. I met the Patriarch of Constantinople, and I thought at the time, I'm like, what's the big deal? But it is a big deal.
It is a big deal, yeah.
And he gave us a cross, and I've still got that. So I think Yavneh does that exceptionally well.
Rabbi Jacopovitz, who was a chief.
Oh, I know him. Yeah.
Of course.
Jacopovitz, come on. Yeah.
But for the listeners who may not know, he was a chief rabbi of the United Kingdom many years ago. He said, like, there's a sense in which every nation should view themselves as chosen. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. We're all called upon to be like the best that we can be, right? So if you go to a Greek Orthodox education, you take pride in your community, and you
yes,
that's a good thing.
Yeah,
and that's what the Jews are doing too.
So Sam, I'm assuming this is in your book, because you are a chassid of Rabbi Sachs, and you're potentially his only chassid. Is that fair? Meaning most people don't see him as a rebbe.
Yeah, he's my rebbe. Yeah,
that's amazing. And are you his only chassid, or do you know of other people?
No, I know other people had a relationship with him like that. I mean, what Rav Chaim is saying is that outside of the Hasidic world, your rabbi is your teacher. He might teach you Talmud, or he'll teach you halacha, or he'll teach you some area. But a rebbe is someone that you try to shape your entire life to be more like, and whose very presence you cherish because you feel like you're in the presence of something holy, an ambassador of God. And my relationship with Rabbi Sachs was more like a Rebbe than a rabbi, but I don't think I'm the only one. I think there's a handful of us.
A fraternity.
Interesting.
So Rabbi Sachs, he has a perception, I think he speaks about this in Not in God's Name, where he writes that chosenness is always the younger who's chosen, right? So you have whether it's Hevel chosen over Cain, and then Yitzchak is chosen over Yishmael,
Jacob over Esav,
correct,
Joseph
over Reuven, and then Moshe over Aaron and Miriam. And
I'm the youngest child of Chaim. I like this line.
So my understanding of his sort of thesis is that God specifically chooses the one who has a complex about being chosen, meaning the older one would naturally
feel chosen.
Feel exactly, and would sort of lord it over, while the younger one has a natural sort of inadequacy.
Yeah.
And that's almost built in, because a great leader is not someone who feels that they are better, but a great leader is one who actually feels a little bit inadequate. So it's almost like the Jewish complex about chosenness is the very reason why Hashem chose.
Yeah,
is that something you talk about?
I do. I have a chapter on Rabbi Sachs, and it very much shapes my own view on chosenness. He thinks that, first of all, there's a massive difference, night and day, between a chosen people and, God forbid, a master race. A master race think of themselves as like better than everyone else, and that that everyone else should be subjected to them. Whereas a chosen people feel that they're called upon, perhaps in their very inadequacy, like you said, Ruchaim, to serve others, right? To be a blessing to others. And he says, and this relates to what you said, Ruchaim, he says that God chose a perennially despised and disenfranchised and kind of marginalized people in order to teach the entire world about the dignity of difference. He chose us and blessed difference, and when the world learns to embrace difference, not superficially. There are lots of places right now in the world that claim to be really open-minded and anti-racist and progressive, in which Jews aren't invited and aren't made to feel comfortable, and in fact are kind of sidelined. But when the world really learns to embrace what Rabbi Sachs calls the dignity of difference, then we'll be on the path to redemption.
So, Dasker, I rudely interrupted your question there.
No, it's okay. Well, speaking of teaching, my last name, Daskalu, means teacher in Greek.
Cool.
So there you go.
There you go.
But speaking about Greek philosophy,
yeah, go on.
You walk into Athens, ancient Greece. You're in a time machine. You walk into the Parthenon, and you're allowed a quick coffee and chat with a philosopher. Who are you meeting with? Quick answer.
Well, Socrates. I mean,
Socrates.
It has to be
Socrates.
It has to be.
What are you going to talk about? What's the number one topic?
It would be very hard, but I'd want to let him lead the conversation. The reason it would be hard is because...
But why?
Yeah, why? But the problem is he keeps asking questions. That's like the Socratic method.
Yep.
So it would be hard to like steer the conversation into any one direction, but I think I would enjoy being grilled by him.
You could just go to Oakley and just sit with an old Greek man, and they'll probably do the same thing. Call Socrates, and they'll be like, "You're from Israel? Oh, you're a rabbi? Ah, good. Sit down. We have a coffee." All right, interesting. But Rav, that leads me to the next question.
Yeah.
Greek philosophy versus Jewish philosophy. Which one is the GOAT, meaning greatest of all time? And there's only one correct answer. And we know what it is.
I can't bear this. I like the mixture of Jewish-Greek philosophy.
The mixture of Jewish-Greek philosophy. Okay, we'll let that pass. We'll let that pass.
You take Philo of Alexandria, who's a Greek-speaking Jew who was.
So I can speak. Look,
There
mashallah.
you go.
Sababa, Boker Tov.
Who's basically an ancient Mr. D.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
So Philo and Maimonides was doing that. He was doing a mashup of Greek and Jewish. I like that.
Okay.
Can I throw in my 2 cents, and you tell me if I'm totally way off the mark?
Yeah, go on.
Can I argue that philosophy is sort of a Greek import into Judaism, I know that there's an amazing book by Yoram Hazony called The Philosophy of Hebrew Scripture.
That is a great read.
It is a great read.
Oh,
It is.
I've heard.
Where he sort of he argues that Torah is actually a book of philosophy written as stories. But that's the way we're just used to philosophy written in a certain way.
Yeah.
Torah is a different way of writing philosophy. So that book aside, which does make a compelling case, you could say that the Greeks sort of forced us into philosophy, but Judaism is not essentially philosophical. Is that fair?
I feel torn on
I think,
this
Rav,
issue.
you're a bit controversial here because
Yeah.
Rav Lebens loves Greek philosophy.
I really
and
do.
I didn't say I don't love it.
I know,
I
it's just
said the Greeks introduced us to
feeling
it.
a bit triggered.
Yeah, it's just too much. I can
I
feel
know,
the
yeah,
heartbeat,
I
the
know.
heat's coming out of.
I know.
Yeah.
Because I think it's complicated because this is a big thing that Rabbi Sachs wanted to impress upon the world is that, yes, we talk about Torah and Chokhmah, but there is Chokhmah in the Torah. There are whole books of wisdom literature, the book of Job, the book of Proverbs. Those are written in the style of ancient philosophical texts. So there's philosophy in Scripture already, right? So on this, I like the book you mentioned by Yoram Hazony. I have some criticisms of it, but I agree with him on that central thesis. I think Greek philosophy. So I agree in part. Judaism imported lots of Greek ideas into the body of Torah,
Like the Afikomen.
like the Afikomen.
Yeah, the Afikomen. Come on, without the Afikomen,
what
there
do
would
you
be no Komen.
That's a Greek word.
It's a Greek word.
Oh, Afikomen. Yeah, of course.
But we imported lots of Greek ideas into the body of Judaism, especially as kind of Judaism met Aristotelianism, and so you get this whole movement of Jewish Aristotelians with Maimonides at the head. And I accept that there are loads of foreign ideas that get moved into Judaism. And in fact, Rav Soloveitchik in his Halachic Mind said it would be a good exercise to try and trace, where the influence of Athens is most felt and where, so to speak, the influence of Jerusalem is most felt. But putting aside Greek ideas, philosophy is just the love of wisdom. It's merely the idea of thinking as systematically and as abstractly as you can. And Jews might have gone about that in a different way and with different methods, but I would resist the idea that it's alien to Judaism.
My old Greek history teacher just said Greek philosophy, imagine it, an analogy was just an interesting way to argue without yelling.
Yeah.
Because, the Greeks were quite loud
Yeah,
over
but where,
lunch.
where the Greeks, the rabbis argued about Jewish law. When it came to theology, they tended to tell stories, and whereas the Greeks argued about everything. They put everything into argument form.
And that's what we're going to talk about next, Rav. I've got a few more little things. We've got Who Said It, okay?
Right. Oh, my God.
So, famous philosopher. But before we get to that, do you think in philosophy we could add words from Gen Alpha into mainstream philosophy like skibbity, riz, or this is what the Year 7s, I told them I'm having a podcast with you, and they said, ask Rav Lebens if we could put skibbity, riz, aura into the Torah somehow.
I'm going to try.
The Torah already has aura in it.
I'm going to try.
Yes.
I'm taking that mantle on. One thing, philosophers actually do enjoy making up new words for things, because often we find a concept that somehow lies between two well-known concepts, and you need to just name it.
Can you give us one of your made-up words?
I don't know if I've made up any words.
But
that's
imagine
not good enough.
skibbity riz, that is just up there. It's going to be remembered forever, Rav.
But we have funny terminology, so we talk about zombies in philosophy, and we mean something very specific by it, not what you get in sci-fi exactly. And we talk about gunk in philosophy, and we mean something similar by it, and the blobject.
The blobject.
The blobject is a philosophical
Rav,
term.
where is this in Gemara? Why don't we do zombie, gunk, blobject stuff? Yeah.
A blobject is basically a blobby object. But anyway, we like making up words like that. So I'm going to find it. That's my job.
Okay,
I'll
good.
try and make skibbity.
All right, good. Who said it? Famous philosophers.
Okay.
And don't cheat. Here we go. They're going to start off easy, then they get harder.
Okay.
The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing.
Sounds like Socrates.
Socrates, thank you. That's my old uncle. Okay, next. What is hateful to you do not do to your fellow. This is the whole Torah. The rest is the explanation.
I love it that you've
Go
listed
and-
him as a philosopher.
Go and learn.
It's Hillel Hazaken.
Hillel's golden rule, actually.
Yeah.
So you got that correct and incorrect.
No, I got it completely correct.
Okay, right, look, here we go. Yeah, you can look at me. Look, ready?
Okay.
But then you can see through your
Here we go.
sheet.
Okay.
When the good Lord kills 2 chickens, one of them is sick.
When the good Lord kills 2 chickens, one of them is sick. Is that Tevye from?
Yes,
from
it is.
It is.
Yes, it is. Debbie. Yes, you got that correct. Wow. Okay, here we go. Try or try not. No, try not. Do or do not. There is no try.
That sounds like a sports coach.
No. Try not. Do or do not.
It's Yoda.
There is no try.
It's Yoda.
That is the
It's
basis
Yoda.
of
Yeah.
philosophy. Okay,
Yeah,
here we go.
yeah.
This one's a hard one. Give the man a mask, and he'll show you his true self.
Oh,
Oh, that is deep, Rav.
that's really profound.
Isn't it deep, Rav Cowen?
It is very, very deep.
Give him
I
the
The person who
Rav.
said this has got immense knowledge. Maybe even more than you, Rav.
I'm sure.
I don't know. Like, you could have met this person. Maybe they could be from a biblical time, or they could be sitting in this very room.
It's Rav
Give the man a mask. You know, he explained that to me once, and I couldn't understand it after about 4
I think that's
explanations.
beautiful.
Give the man a mask.
And then you'll really see.
But we were talking about Batman.
Well, but it relates to the
Yeah.
world today where lots of masked wearers, they only tell you who they are when their faces are covered.
Yeah.
I
because-
mean, it's
yeah.
very
It's like
unfortunate.
Batman. We were
But
talking
it's
about
also,
Batman.
but it's also
Yeah.
in a spiritual, positive way as well. On Purim, we wear a mask to reveal ourselves.
Exactly. All right, last one. One step at a time. I'm going to leave you with one thing. And if you don't do the work, don't take the steps, you sit here in finals time. I want you to put this on. Put this on.
I think it might be missed.
Put this on. Okay, I'm going to read it to you again.
I think it might be
I want you, Rav, read.
He's
No,
just,
no,
he's just
I'll-
put a
yeah.
magpie's
One-
scarf on him for those who are not watching
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
One step at a time. I'm going to leave you with one thing. If you don't do the work, don't take the steps, you sit here in finals time. Rav, this is going on YouTube. The whole world's going to see
That
this.
sounds like supreme wisdom.
That
supreme
is
wisdom of a Mr.
the
D.
Collingwood. No, the Collingwood football
no.
coach,
The Collingwood
Craig
football coach.
Fly McRae, who's going to see this,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that is it.
What's his name?
You have Craig McRae.
Craig McRae.
Fly. They call him Fly.
Fly. What wisdom?
What wisdom? It's about when they won the grand final, the
Yeah.
premiership. It's like don't take. You have to take the steps
You
to
do.
get to the top, and you can't just rush.
Every marathon starts with the first few steps.
Exactly.
Right?
Every Mifgash starts with
Yeah.
Rav Cowen saying, "Get
Come
to
on."
Mifgash." Well, Rav, I think
that was fantastic.
that was my questions.
I
Yeah.
enjoyed myself.
yeah, good.
good.
Yeah,
Well-
so did I. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Daska.
No,
Thank
I just
you.
want to say thank you to Rav Cowen and thank you, Sam, in your busy schedule, finding time to come in here into the
Thank you very
podcast
much.
booth.
It's my great pleasure.
It's one of the best rooms at Yavneh.
It is.
It
But
is.
yeah, hope to see you back very soon.
Everyone loves Mr. D for a reason. You need to
No,
know.
we love you.
So
You helped
need
us
to
with the
hear
soccer
it.
team too. But Rav, one day I'll get to Israel and then
Ezra
you'll get to
Hashem.
Greece. We'll go to the Parthenon.
That's right.
And
And then we can have a
I'll take
podcast
you
after
to
that.
My second cousin works there. He can get us in there. We can
Awesome.
just have a chat
At
about.
the Parthenon.
We can just say why.
Yeah, together. And
Why?
we'll stroke our beards. You'll have to
Yes.
grow a beard for it.
Yes, I
Okay.
will. Yeah.
Daska, have you grown a beard before?
No, it gets too itchy,
Does
Rav.
get
But then
itchy.
I've heard that it
You,
doesn't
do, you
get
just got to
itchy.
get past the itchy
Get
stage.
used to it.
I
Yeah.
got past that at about 14.
Gotcha. Well, every time I'm Greek, when I shave by 5 o'clock, I look like,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, this has been the Yavneh Podcast Studio. Thank you, Rav Lebens, again,
great
and Rav
pleasure.
Cowen. We'll see
Bye,
you
guys.
next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Ciao.